Sophie sat at the end of the long mahogany dining table, her tiny hands gripping the edge as her mother, Veronica Blake, one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, sipped her wine and spoke as though she were making a business deal. "Sweetheart," Veronica said smoothly, "you're old enough to help me make an important decision. I want you to choose a new father. I've shortlisted 5 of the wealthiest, most successful men I know. Any one of them could give us both a life most people only dream of." She gestured to the polished folder in front of her, each page holding the glossy photo of a man, a banker, a tech mogul, a real estate tycoon, a luxury car dealer, and a world-famous surgeon. Sophie stared at the pictures without touching them. Her mother's voice was calm, but Sophie could feel the cold calculation in it. Veronica's last marriage, Sophie's father, had ended years ago in a bitter fight over money. Since then, Veronica had run her company like an empire and her home like a corporate office. Sophie had learned to be quiet, obedient, and invisible, except when her mother wanted her to be part of an image. That night, Sophie couldn't sleep. She wasn't ready to pick a stranger to be her new dad. She wanted someone who would actually care, not someone who could just buy things. She thought about the one person at her mother's skyscraper office who always noticed her, the janitor, Daniel. Daniel was a single dad himself. Every Friday when Sophie visited the office after school, Daniel would be mopping the floor in the lobby, humming some old tune. He would stop, smile warmly, and say, "How was school today, kiddo?" He never talked down to her. He remembered her favorite candy. Sometimes, if she had homework, he'd sit with her in the break room while her mother finished meetings, telling her stories about his own little boy, Max, who was around her age. The next afternoon, Veronica hosted a formal dinner for the 5 candidates. Sophie sat quietly through introductions, listening as they talked about stock portfolios, luxury resorts, and sports cars. None of them looked at her for more than a second. None asked her anything beyond, "So, what grade are you in?" It was like she was a decorative piece in the room, not a person. And then, by coincidence, Daniel came into the dining hall. He had been called upstairs to fix a leaking pipe in the private lounge. He wore his janitor's uniform, his hands still damp from wiping them. Sophie's eyes lit up. "Hi, Daniel," she called across the room before Veronica could stop her. The 5 wealthy men gave him a quick, dismissive glance. Daniel, embarrassed, nodded politely and said, "Hey, Sophie. Hope you're having a good evening." Something in Sophie's heart clicked. She saw the difference so clearly. These men treated her like an accessory, but Daniel spoke to her like she mattered. The next morning, when Veronica pressed her to choose, Sophie took a deep breath. "I've decided," she said. "I want Daniel to be my new dad." Veronica froze. "The janitor?" Her voice dripped disbelief. "Sophie, this isn't a fairy tale. He can't give you the life you deserve. He can't even give himself that life." But Sophie's voice trembled with emotion. "He listens to me, Mom. He cares. He talks about his son like he's the most important person in the world. I want that kind of dad, not someone who just buys me stuff." Veronica refused at first. She even forbade Sophie from talking to Daniel at the office. But Sophie didn't give up. She started telling her mother small stories about him, how he worked double shifts to pay for his son's school shoes, how he skipped lunch so Max could have a better birthday cake, how he never complained. Slowly, Veronica began to notice the details she'd always overlooked. The real turning point came a few weeks later, when Veronica's company faced a building emergency, a burst water main on the top floor that threatened millions in damage. The executives panicked, the wealthy men in her circle were nowhere to be found, and it was Daniel who stayed through the night, knee-deep in water, fixing the problem alongside the maintenance crew. When Veronica thanked him, he just shrugged and said, "I've got a family to feed. I know what it's like when you've got people counting on you." That night, Veronica saw Sophie watching her expectantly. She finally said, you were right about him." Months later, Veronica invited Daniel and Max over for dinner. It wasn't a proposal, not yet, but it was a beginning. Sophie sat between them, her heart light for the first time in years. She didn't know if Daniel would ever officially be her father, but she knew she had chosen someone who understood love in its truest form. The challenges weren't over. Daniel still worked long hours, Veronica still had her high-pressure career, and blending two families was no easy task. There were awkward moments, misunderstandings, and adjustments. But through it all, Daniel treated Sophie with patience, honesty, and respect. Veronica learned that true wealth wasn't in her bank accounts, it was in the quiet moments of care and kindness. In the end, Sophie's choice changed all of their lives. She didn't just choose a new father. She chose a new way for their family to be, built not on money, but on love. And for the first time, even Veronica felt rich in the ways that truly mattered.